Okay, with that, it's 7 o'clock and we'll call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Atchison, and we heard that she wasn't gonna be able to make it tonight. Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Hoag?
Present.
Mr. Merlington? Here to be here, Ms. Naprowski? Here. Mr. Nixon?
Here.
And Mr. Conley is here. Tonight, we're gonna welcome back Mr. Moore. Hope you had a good time off.
I was in another meeting, so I would have rather been here, honestly.
It would have been better if you had had time off, so. For you, not for us. Of course, want to note that city manager, Ms. Falcon, can't be here this evening, and I'm assuming that Ms. Johnson's gonna be pulling double duty in that capacity tonight. We have minutes from our last meeting of July 11th. Anything that we need to look at on those before we can approve them?
Second.
Any other discussion before we approve them? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of the last meeting, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. We have minutes. Next, we have to have our agenda approved. So is there anything we need to look at on tonight's agenda before we approve it?
I think we can wait until we move to that section to table and one issue, so we'll just wait to do it officially then.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. Next, we have public comments. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. It's the only time during the meeting that citizens are allowed to address the planning commission. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like. Do we have anyone online? Okay. Hearing none. We're going to move on to item 7, conflicts of interest or ex parte communication. Do we have any of that to report from members of the planning commission? Hearing none. We're on to a public hearing. So this public hearing is for the rezoning request for 14300 White Creek, Cedar Springs. And I will open up the public hearing for anyone that wants to comment on that. Line, anywhere? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And we will move on to discuss and consider the rezoning request. Is there anything we need to know, Mr. Moore?
Not specifically. So this is, as you know, we sort of went through this process a little more than a year ago, the first time that the White Creek Flats project was brought in front of you. Planning Commission recommended approval of that rezoning at that time, along with approval of the site plan. Process was never completed then. They had to make some adjustments to the site plan and kind of redesign things. Council never took up the rezoning last year. They never took up the 425 agreement last year. Those items have since been completed. So the 425 is done, as I understand it. The Planning Commission approved the site plan for White Creek Flats a couple of months ago, or last month maybe. And so contingent upon the property being rezoned. So now that the 425 agreement is completed, for all intents and purposes, the land is now within the city of Cedar Springs. It's not in the township anymore, and it falls into your zoning jurisdiction. And sort of by default, it comes in under an ag zoning classification. So now we need to change that from an R3, which is what they're seeking, that would make the apartment project work. So when we review the apartments, that was assuming that the R3 rezoning would be in place here. We reviewed the project against the standards of the R3 zoning district. So that's kind of been the assumption the whole time that this will be okay. In the report that we wrote back in July for this project, we went through the rezoning standards that are in your zoning ordinance, looking at whether it's consistent with the master plan, if all the uses possible in that district are appropriate for the site. If there are other areas of the city that would be better suited for what they're proposing, and if this would be any kind of substantial detriment to neighboring properties and the vicinity. As you all know, this land has long been sort of within that 425 area, it's been planned for this kind of thing for a long time, so. This is a short way of me saying we don't have any issues with it. I don't anticipate the planning commission would either, since this is the same thing that you approved about a year ago. Or recommended approval of a year ago. So this is kind of the last step in all of these processes that has to happen. So this would be a recommendation to city council. City council would make the final decision on the rezoning. Then once that's done, they would have the right zoning in place and the 425 in place. Then they would also have an approvable site plan that they can move forward with and presumably begin.
That's satisfactory to everybody. Is there anything, I'd be happy to open it up to the applicant, but I'm not sure if there's anything more that needs to be said there.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, can I get a motion?
I would make a motion to recommend to the city council to approval of the rezoning request for 14300 White Creek Avenue, Cedar Springs, Michigan, 49319 from Ag AG to R3.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Looks like we have no site plan reviews tonight. And 10 under other business, we have on there, the tabled business of Strange Roots. And you could let me know what's going on with that officially, and then we'll move forward with it.
Well, it's my understanding that we've not received a letter of the city from, I don't know what the correct word is, but, Michigan has not rescinded their license, therefore I do not have a license available to, issue to Strange Roots. At this point, we're just waiting for that notice to happen. I do see that the applicant is online, if there's any additional information that they'd like to provide. The only reason it's on your agenda currently is because we did table it to the next meeting, so it came back at that next meeting. If we're not ready to approve of it at this point, a motion to postpone indefinitely.
If the applicant is online, I'll recognize them so we can see where we're at with that, if that works.
Good evening, Attorney James McGilly appearing on behalf of applicant Strange Roots LLC. Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't catch everything that was just previously said. I did catch Michigander not having yet relinquished or rescinded their local license, and I definitely agree with that. Ultimately, there's not much of an update. I think respectfully, we're going to ask if this matter could be tabled until I believe it's the 5th of September meeting, because the closing on the property has not yet occurred, and there's some other attendant issues, including a step 2 application. But we're very cognizant of the city's not dilemma, but trepidation in issuing 2 potentially overlapping local licenses. Even though that's not going to be a risk because you're not going to issue 2 at the same time. We're not asking you to, but we do just obviously have to get our ducks in a row and get the properties closed on, and any last minute changes that the applicant may have to be identified. There aren't any substantive ones going forward. I guess by way of full disclosure, the applicant has indicated its intention and desire to change the exterior facade a little bit of the structure to more closely match what I understand is on the brewery across the street. So that's something that they will look into a little further in the future. They're not looking to hold up this process unnecessarily, and we do appreciate your patience throughout. But I would just ask if the commission would consider tabling this application and this matter until September 5th, by which time these closings must have occurred. So we do ask that this evening.
Thank you. So I guess the only question then we have here is we were considering postponing indefinitely. Or we could table specifically to the next meeting. It doesn't matter to me as long as, I mean, I guess it's up to
what
Make a
you all
motion
wanna
to
do.
table it. Sounds like they're ready at the next meeting. We might as well just table it till the next one then and move it on. I'll make a motion to table it to the September meeting.
I would assume they table it indefinite until they get their ducks in order to come. And no difference whether we just keep kicking it down the road every month. This way,
Yeah,
when they get their ducks in order, they'll be here, they'll be back.
There was, so right now I have a motion.
I'll take my motion off the table and
Oh, okay.
defer to Mr. Hall.
Okay,
I didn't make a motion, it was just a recommendation.
okay. So either way, I'm sure we will see them when they're
Yeah.
ready. So it's just a question of how we have just,
Well,
that's dotting i's and t's here, so.
yes, if we table it indefinitely until they come back, it saves the clerk work to keep posting it. And then maybe next month they might not be ready. If not, they'll be ready in October. If not, they'll be ready in November. We can still put them on.
Yeah, I guess indefinitely could be September fifth if everything's ready. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna have a
I
motion.
would make that.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of tabling it indefinitely, please reply with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We hope we can do business with you next month or whatever it makes sense.
Very much look forward to it. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then open discussion for issues not on the agenda. Correspondence again. We have the 2023 calendar, nothing new to report on that, I'm assuming, just the calendar. And then we have a variety of upcoming projects. I'm not sure if, I guess I'll leave it up to you and Mr. Moore if there's anything we want to add. I know that when this was made, we were probably anticipating that Ms. Falco would be here. But is there anything that any of you would like to take out of any of those or let us know about?
No, so we've had some discussion with Family Farm and Home about outdoor storage. We're waiting on them. The mixed use building, again, I have not been too involved in those conversations. I know there's someone has some plans for this building. I'm not sure what is going to happen there, but I've not seen a drawing or anything yet. Vanderhyde Ford, we looked at that 2 months ago. They are, I think, wanting to move forward. It's just taken them a long time to secure an engineer and get a site plan prepared. And then the future site condominium development, I don't remember if we talked about that a month or two ago. That's just something that's been looked at. There is a sort of a sketch put together for a potential development here, but again, there's nothing concrete, I don't think, on that side of things. And then box signs, I do have a memo that I included with some data or ordinance language, which we can discuss if you want to move on to that item.
Yeah, I was curious about, I mean, I saw your things in there and, I was, as far as the box signs go, the one part of what you said was that we seem to be, putting more effort into regulating signs in this community than other communities our size. And I'm certainly not looking to do that. But I always speak for myself. So I guess there's a question for the planning commission as to how much effort we want to put into this. Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Several years ago on the planning commission, I've been here too long. We got with the merchants and everything, and this is pretty much what they decided they wanted. Box signs, and it's like, we've had them, that's been when Mr. Carmen was here, 17. It's like, it works, let's not, at least that's my opinion. How many you look on Main Street and every other business has a box sign. If we abandon them or, disallow them, everybody on Main Street's gonna have to change their sign. And that's gonna cause them.
Right now, box signs are prohibited on Main Street.
And so that was the problem that I understood. I understood Mr. Womack's dilemma in that we had a bunch of box signs and we had an ordinance that said no box signs. So the question is, I guess, for the planning commission is, do we want to change the ordinance that says no box signs to allow more flexibility? Do we want to amend the language somewhere along the way? Do we want to spend a lot of time digging into our sign ordinances about what we want and what we don't want?
The only thing that annoys me about the box signs is there is no cohesiveness. We don't have cohesiveness because we have different sizes and they're old, so they haven't been updated, so a lot of them look really bad. And then you have the flat signs that they just throw up on the building that we talked about, I believe with Mr. Womack, that we need to put something around those. And so there's no cohesiveness. And that's the only thing that really irks me, is when you drive through our town, it just looks like the signs are just thrown up wherever and it's whatever they want to throw up. And it's like, I just wish it was cohesive.
Maintenance issue.
And the maintenance, yes, it's, some of these signs are so old, you can look up there and be like, that looks like it needs to be changed.
I want to throw it back to Mr. Moore. So from a legal point of view, like we talked about before, with the fact that we do have what our ordinance says is not what we're doing.
Yep.
Are there any other major concerns that we need to be addressing and not just leaving a status quo?
Well, I guess so I wrote in here that like, yes, I mean, so most of our clients, so I work for like Greenville, Lowell, Belding, guys, some other small towns. None of them have specific, so all of these would fall under a sign just called a wall sign, whether it was the plastic thing that's just screwed into the wall, or whether it's a box sign, whether there's channel cut letters or not channel cut, they're all treated the exact same way in terms of what kind of sign it is. So we've never taken that sort of additional step of trying to figure out how to regulate some of these other signs, and what concerns me a little bit about doing that. The box sign one, I think, is probably a little bit easier because it is a very common thing that it's like this cabinet that just gets attached to the wall and is typically internally illuminated. But when we're talking about a plastic or some sort of fiberglass panel that gets screwed into the wall, Mr. Womack had kind of indicated, yeah, they look kind of cheap and flimsy and all this other stuff, which I agree with to a point, but I'm not sure if, so I think it's going to be hard to regulate that because so much of it, I mean, someone can probably put one together that's made out of plastic. It looks beautiful. And it maybe it has a frame, maybe it doesn't have a frame, maybe it's just the design on the sign and how it's installed and what the colors are and how it works together. Maybe it just works and it looks great, but we would say, oh, sorry, this looks fine, but it's not made out of the right kind of material. And then similarly, if we require a frame or a certain type of material, somebody could still do that, paint it somehow to look absolutely terrible, right? I mean, so sort of trying to regulate taste in a lot of ways is something that I'm hesitant to do because there's not as much of an like objective basis for that. Like a wall sign is a wall sign. It's easy to say you can have a wall sign, be this many square feet, they can't stick out as far. If we want to eliminate or discourage box signs, you could say that they can't be internally illuminated. I have seen that before, where you say that a wall sign has to have external illumination only. So you'll be more likely to get a flat panel within a lamp that comes out from the wall and shines back on it a little bit. A lot of people think those look a little bit better, or they'll opt for like a projecting sign that sticks out perpendicular from the building or something like that. So that's probably the biggest concern that I have, is that I'm a little hesitant to get into, you know, mandating or prohibiting certain materials for wall signs or for box signs, or saying channel cut versus not channel cut or whatever. Because you can see stuff that looks really good that would violate that ordinance, and you can see stuff that looks really bad that would comply. And it can be really challenging to sort of draw that line in a way that's fair.
See, I like that, because I like that where you can put the flat up, but if you put the outside illumination, that's not too bad. But I think in the ordinance, they're supposed to be illuminated as it is, and they're not. And so it already looks bad because they're not illuminated. So when you drive through at night, you don't know what's up there.
Yep.
So I kind of do like that, what you're talking about, which I don't think that would be too bad.
Yeah, I mean, a box sign is defined as an internally illuminated sign. So I'm not, so I know there's a bunch of box signs downtown. And we know that they're prohibited, so you're right, some of them are probably not non-conforming that have been here for a long time. Other ones, I mean, people put stuff up without telling anybody and nobody catches. Or somebody might have signed off on it thinking, oh yeah, it's fine, it's a wall sign, they just missed that part of the ordinance and put it up there and. It happens, mistakes get made sometimes. Maybe they didn't know, maybe they didn't catch it at that particular time, maybe. Who knows why something was different, but. So if we remove the requirement for a box sign to be internally illuminated. That would help, so a box sign, as we know it today would still be a box sign. And if you prohibited internal illumination on something like that, you would still basically end up prohibiting box signs, just you'd be doing it slightly differently, because all those internal rectangular signs with lamps inside of them would still be disallowed. So you'd kind of be still getting rid of box signs, you'd be moving towards more basic wall signs or panel signs, or whatever you call them now. Internal lamp shines back on them. Is that going to result in better looking signs? I honestly don't know.
What if we look at Greenville's ordinance and bring that to us and let us look at that?
Yeah, I mean, we can pull a few of them from Lowell and Greenville and some other towns and see what that would.
I think
we can go through. I mean, I know Lowell's really, really well. I've been working with it for 10 years now.
Yeah, cause it seems like, excuse me, but every manager we get, we run into this problem when we gotta change the signs.
And when,
Like,
yeah,
I'm tired of dealing with signs.
yes. And again, understand the position the manager's in when they are
Yeah.
expected to enforce something that's unenforceable.
Right.
In the situation that we currently have it. So I'd like to have the clean language, look at some other
Correct.
examples, so it's enforceable. And that actually brings me to my other point, that I'd like to have Ms. Falcon's input on
Yes.
this, because she's the one ultimately that has to enforce these things.
Yes.
And not that we were gonna make a decision tonight anyway, but I think that when the rubber meets the road, and you have to deal with these businesses, what tools would she like to have in order to be able to do it?
And ultimately, the code enforcement person is the one that's gonna have to deal with any language we put out. You know, if they're constantly fighting, dealing with sign ordinances, there's other things that they can't get to.
Yeah.
So it's, you win one and you lose the other battle.
It's funny, the box sign thing hasn't really come up. So I don't do a lot of sign stuff in Greenville, but like in Lowell, I mean, they've had their current sign ordinance. We just updated it, but it's basically the same. They've had their current sign ordinance in place for 10 years now. I don't think they've ever had a single box sign like that placed downtown. They've got them out in the strip malls,
Mhm.
West Main Street and all that. Yeah, tons of them, and whatever, those are fine. I don't think anyone's ever even asked for one downtown. Everyone there either puts up a projecting sign or they put something in the window or both. Some of them it's on the wall or on a marquee or something, but they just haven't had. I don't think I've ever looked at one downtown. So it's just a different experience, right? And here you have some, and you have people who want to do them. In some places, they probably make sense, like down at the light where that little strip center is.
Mhm.
Box sign probably isn't a big deal there, but I don't know that you would want one right across from City Hall, or if Cedar Springs Brewing put up a great big, just solid box sign, you might go, yeah, it's not much room.
We have to recognize that our position in where we are with the developing a downtown. I mean, we're not gonna pretend that we have a downtown developed like Greenville has. I mean, Greenville's been there forever as a focal point. Ours is not really at that point. It's coming
Growing.
back.
Yes.
We have the opportunity to to mold it in ways that make sense, but it's not there yet. So I think our approach and our ordinances need to reflect that.
Very true.
That's very true.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking to, if in by we, I mean, the planning commission, if you're looking to. You know, make things like signage as, I don't want to say as easy as possible, but make the process, you know. Remove impediments and make that process go as smoothly as possible and give them options, right? Because they're subject to other land use restrictions, they're subject to other building restrictions in terms of the size of the building, and what they can do with it. Traffic is moving slower, so they don't need like 200 square feet of signage like they demand out on out by 131. But you can provide them options in terms of, you can allow for window signs, you can allow for wall signs, marquee signs. Traffic isn't going 50, they're going 25. So the smaller signs are more effective because people see them, and some people are walking, they're not driving, so. That can help you because you can point out all of the different sign types that they have. But like in Lowell, we're pretty restrictive there on, they're restrictive on size, like anywhere in the city, I think the biggest sign you can do is like 50 square feet, it's pretty small. But they make up for that by offering a number of different types, especially downtown. So we could look at an approach similar to that, where you give them a whole bunch of options, but maybe you would. Like if box signs are something that you don't want, you could just say you can't have an internally illuminated sign. Let them light them up, let them put the panels on, just, that would basically prohibit box signs and, you know, internally lit wall signs, but you have something that gets them where they need to be. And if you don't want to spend the money on that, then you have other options for them. You say, okay, we'll do a projecting sign, you could do a marquee window, sandwich board, some other stuff. So some of that I think can help too, just if there are options.
And most people that run Main Street are probably about 95% of them drive through every morning and every evening, so they know what businesses are where. That 5%, they're wandering through town.
And I do like the businesses that put up the neon and they have their name in the window. I think that even catches your attention more than just a sign on the side of the building, because that's lit up and it looks good. Stein Brothers has it, and I think Scott's has one. And I mean, it looks good.
There was a big battle there where they put like a sign open in the window and that.
The other thing that we included, just so you know what I'm talking about with all of these sign types, is there's a bunch of graphics we were tacked on to the end of that, so you can sort of see what they all look like. So when I say projecting sign, you know what I mean by that. So we can,
That was helpful.
we can incorporate some of those into a new revised, updated ordinance if we end up going in that direction. So it'll be hopefully helpful to see what's permitted. So we primarily be looking downtown at marquees, you know, awnings, windows, walls. But yeah, we can, yeah, so I'll pull some sample sign ordinances from a few other communities and provide them for the next meeting, and we can kind of continue to move forward.
And it came up at the last meeting, we were gone, what priority we wanted to put on this. And at the last meeting, we kind of decided when you can, this is not one of our fires burning bright. So, however, you know, if there's other things, then we're gonna let other things happen in front of this. This is just something where really, again, as long as the manager can process what's in front of her. Yeah. When this gets fixed, it gets fixed. Okay.
Awesome.
Moving on to staff comments then. So I'm going to give, Ms. Johnson both roles if you would like them, but, city manager or city clerk.
That upcoming project section is kind of it's on the menu to come. You may not see the move for an entire month, but it's just there, so you know it's coming at some point. If there are projects that fall off and they no longer can move forward, we'll pull them off from there, but that's just as a heads up.
Okay.
Other than that, not much. some summer evening tonight. and you guys have fun.
All right,
Thank you.
planning commission members, any comments?
You know, I noticed here on these 4 or 5 site plans are incomplete. And we had that recommendation that if they weren't complete, we wouldn't look at them. Anyway, it just saves us a lot of time and the clerk a lot of time.
Mhm.
Just as a reminder, you know, how many times have we looked at family farm and home closed their outdoor? They're building something, they're doing something else and it's like, yeah,
When we have it, we'll have it.
it just irritates me when we sit here and they come in and say, well, we wanna do this, and it's like, no, it's not complete. And then they come back maybe a month later and, no, it's not complete. So instead of putting it on to discuss it, anything, have them complete. You know, if they talk with our planner. Once he's approved that, okay, this is a complete site plan, bring it to us. It just saves everybody a lot of time, you and the clerk and the manager and everybody. Plus we get short meetings. That's all my plug.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, then, we don't have a city council representative here tonight, so we'll move on past that. Report of the planning consultant. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Moore?
Nothing further, I'm good.
In that case, adjourned.
Right. Computer off.
That comes the record there. Now, we've done.